In today's video, we're going to discuss how to solve some basic one-step equations. These are nothing too complicated, nothing too tricky, just pretty straightforward one-step equations. So first we're going to talk about the algebraic process. Again, this is Unit 4 and our color is blue. So if you're color coding your notes, color is blue. Alright, solving equations requires us to use inverse operations. Inverse operations are pairs of operations that undo each other. So think about opposite operations. The inverse or opposite of multiplication is division. The inverse or opposite of division is multiplication. The inverse or opposite of addition is subtraction. And the opposite of subtraction is addition. Your mission when solving equations is to isolate the variable. So the word isolate means to be alone. If you are in isolation, that means you are by yourself. So we're trying to get the variable alone by itself. So our steps: identify the variable and circle or highlight it. Step 2, determine which operation you have and its inverse operation. You want to think in your head, what operation do I have? And then, what operation must I use to solve? Step 3 is to draw the wall, and we'll see what that means in just a minute. But in description, the description is this is a vertical line through the equal sign that separates the left and right sides of the equation. Step 4 is to solve the equation. Remember, an equation is like a balanced scale. See right there, balanced scale. In order to keep the equation balanced, whatever we do to one side must also be done to the other side. Step 5 is to check your answer by using substitution. You should get the same number on each side of the equation. Alright, so we have a bunch of examples over here that we're just going to walk through. My first example, I have 144 is equal to 8m. So my variable is m. I'm going to use a highlighter. I'm going to highlight it. Variable is m. Alright, and then I need to think about what operation do I see with the variable 8m. Well, that's going to be multiplication. Those two, the 8 and the m, are right next to each other. And we learned that that means multiplication. So I see multiplication. What do I use? So I'm thinking, what is the opposite of multiplication? The opposite of multiplication is division. So I'm going to then draw my wall, which is that vertical line through the equals. I'm going to look at the side with the variable. I have 8m multiplied together, so I'm going to use division, and I'm going to divide by what's attached to the m. So I'm going to divide by 8. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. I'm going to divide by 8. And then you can use a calculator to help you if you need to. 144 divided by 8 gives me 18. So I have 18 on this side, and I have m on this side. To check, I'm going to plug the 18 back in for m. So I have 144 is equal to 8 times 18. And then I'm going to actually use my calculator to help me check that. So I'm going to do 8 times 18, and I get 144. So I end up with 144 on both sides of the equals, and it checks out. Okay. Example number 2. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to identify that variable. My variable in this case is b. So at this time I'm going to be focused on the left-hand side of the equation. So I'm not going to worry about the 9 right now. What operation do I see with the variable? Well, I see addition. So I'm going to use, or I see addition. I'm going to use the opposite. So I'm going to use subtraction. I'm going to draw my wall. And again, I'm focused on the left-hand side, b plus 17. So I added 17, so I'm going to undo that by subtracting 17. So I subtract 17 from both sides. I'm left with b equals, and then I can use my calculator if I need to. 9 minus 17 is negative 8. So my answer is negative 8. To check, I'm plugging negative 8 back in for b. So I have negative 8 plus 17 equals 9. So I'm going to plug in negative 8 plus 17, and I get 9. So I end up with 9 equals 9, and it checks out. All right, what operation do I see here? So I'm going to find my variable. It's n. And I'm focused on the left-hand side of my equation again, so I'm going to kind of cover up the right. I see n minus 19, so I see subtraction. So I'm going to use the opposite. I'm going to use addition. Draw my wall. Focused on the right. N minus 19. So I'm going to add 19. So that gives me n equals, put this in your calculator if you need to, negative 12 plus 19 gives me 7. So n equals 7. Double check, you plug in 7 for n, 7 minus 19, and then use your calculator just to make sure. 7 minus 19 is negative 12. And I end up with negative 12 equals negative 12. And I got the answer right. All right. For the next one, there should be a division bar between the x and the 20. So my variable is on the left. So I'm focused on the left-hand side of my equation. What operation do I see? I see x divided by 20, so I see division. Opposite of division is multiplication, so I'm going to use multiplication. Draw my wall. X divided by 20, focused on the left, so I divided by 20. In this case, I'm going to need to multiply by 20. And I like to use a dot instead of the x for times. That way I don't confuse this x with this x. It just gets really confusing. So I'm going to use a dot. Multiply both sides by 20. I'm left with x over here. Negative 5 times 20. Negative 5 times 20 is negative 100. Negative 100. And then I'm going to check it. Plug in negative 100 for x. And then I'm going to use my calculator. 100, and then press the plus minus button for negative 100. Divided by 20 is negative 5. So I end up with negative 5 is equal to negative 5. That one checks out. All right, 2 more to go. Variables on the left. Highlight it so I can see it. Focused on the left-hand side of my equation. Drawing a line down the middle. Negative 18x. I see multiplication. Remember, when it's invisible, you can't really see the times sign. It's going to be multiplication. I'm going to use division to solve. So I'm multiplying by a negative 18. I'm going to divide both sides by a negative 18. So these two are going to cancel. I have an x. Negative 18 divided by negative 18. Plug that in the calculator. And I have a positive 1. So x equals 1. Plug it in. Remember, when they're right next to each other, I have to add my times sign. Negative 18 times 1 is negative 18. And if you're not sure and you want to double check, negative 18 in the calculator times 1 is negative 18. All right, last one. I have negative 10 equals y minus 1. Variable's on the right this time, so I'm focused on the right-hand side of my equation. Cover up on the left, I have y minus 1. So I see subtraction with the variable. So I'm going to use addition to solve, so I'm drawing the line down the middle. I subtracted a 1, so I'm going to need to add 1 to both sides. Left with a y on the right. And just to double check, I can type in negative 10 plus 1, and that gives me negative 9. So I have negative 9 is equal to y. And then last thing we're going to do is we're going to check. So I have negative 10 is equal to negative 9 minus 1. Negative 10 equals, I'm going to double check that in my calculator, negative 9 minus 1 is negative 10. Checks out.